morning and welcome to Channel 91 News. I'm Mara.
And I'm Brett.
And today we'll be discussing the Cold War.
The Cold War took place between the United States and the Soviet Union from 1955 until 1975.
The first event we'll be discussing is the Berlin Wall. On August 13, 1961, a wall was constructed down the middle of the city of Berlin. Deep in the middle of the Soviet zone of Germany, the city was split into East Berlin, the capitalist side, and West Berlin, the Soviet communist side. Leading up to the assembly of this wall, the ending of World War II in 1945 left Germany divided into 4 occupation zones, owned by the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviets. The United States, Britain, and France moved to unite their occupations into the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany, and the Soviets launched a blockade to prevent this from happening, but it failed and West Germany was formed by the capitalist countries. In response, the Soviets put up 30 miles of barbed wire between the East and West Germany in 1949. On August 13, 1961, they replaced this fence with an 11.8 feet tall fence that stretched for 91 miles around West Berlin. Disputes between the two sides of Berlin caused East German authorities to close off more and more checkpoints between the sides, claiming that they wanted to protect their citizens from capitalism. Thousands of people died trying to cross the divide. The wall stood for 28 years before the East Germany started opening the borders. People climbed the wall, graffitied, and removed fragments of the wall. The next day, the East German troops began dismantling the wall. As a result of the collapse, the communists ceased to be so influential in Germany. People could be more independent and climb the social ladder, and countries like Poland became allies of the West and made ties with the EU and NATO. Sure had a big impact on the Cold War.
You know what else had a big impact on the Cold War?
What?
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Dun dun dun!
The Cuban Missile Crisis was a standoff between the Soviet Union and the United States after the Soviet Union built missile sites in Cuba, which is less than 100 miles away from Florida. After the Bay of Pigs invasion failed in 1961, which embarrassed the Kennedy administration, new allies Fidel Castro and Nikita Khrushchev saw the missiles as a way of deterring further attacks by the United States. On October 24th, Soviet ships bound for Cuba neared the line of U.S. vessels enforcing the blockade. If the Soviets had attempted to breach the blockade, an all-out nuclear war would have begun. Thank God the Soviets stopped short of the blockade, but it did nothing to stop the missiles in Cuba. On October 27th, an American reconnaissance plane was shot down over Cuba. However, earlier, Nikita Khrushchev sent a letter to the Kennedy administration promising to remove the missiles in Cuba if the United States promised not to attack Cuba. Khrushchev also sent a second letter, but Kennedy decided to ignore it and go with the first agreement.
The Cuban Missile Crisis sure was scary.
You know what else was scary? The Vietnam War! Leading up to the Vietnam War, North Vietnam had defeated the French colonial administration of Vietnam in 1954 in order to unify the whole nation under a communist regime modeled after other communist countries in Europe. South Vietnam, however, wanted a Vietnam with close ties to the West. This left the communist government of North Vietnam pitted against the government of South Vietnam and the United States. Cost and casualties of the war were too much for the United States, which withdrew all combat units by 1973. In 1975, South Vietnam fell into a full-scale invasion by the North. In total, Vietnam lost 2 million soldiers and the U.S. lost 58,200 soldiers. Vietnam emerged as a potent military power in Southeast Asia, but its industry and agriculture were disrupted and cities and towns were extremely damaged. In the U.S., the military was demoralized, having come to terms with their defeat. The two nations resumed formal diplomatic relations in 1995. Have you ever wanted to own a piece of history? Well, now you can with a piece of the wall that's once separated the city of Berlin for a small price of $11,091,989. A team of historians from room 217 have personally verified that the piece is 1,000% real. Just call this number and own a piece of history. 3 ways to contact me. One is on Etsy, another is on Craigslist, and the other is on eBay.
Please donate to the Vietnam campaign. Help your friends and family by donating, or else they'll end up like this. Even only $1 helps. Please donate today. morning and welcome back to Channel 91 News.
Today we are looking at the Chernobyl incident. Trevor is at the site as we speak. Trevor.
On April 25th, 1989, in Pripyat, operators performed routine maintenance but apparently forgot to enable the automatic shutdown mechanisms after their check. According to our sources, the next morning, when the extremely hot nuclear fuel rods were loaded into the cooling water, it caused a surplus of steam. This steam carried too much reactivity to the nuclear core, causing an explosion that decimated the 1,000-ton protection plate covering the core. This cut off the coolant supplies to the reactor, causing a second, bigger explosion. As you can see behind me, everything is just destroyed. From our other reporters in the field, we have some numbers for our viewers out there. 2 plant workers died during the explosion, 28 more from the radiation leaks after the following 4 months, 31 civilians died from radiation exposure in the following 3 months. According to the USSR, they couldn't fully shut it down until December of 2000. Even now, it's not the best idea to be here, but back to you, Marin.
Thanks, Trevor.
How do you think Chernobyl affected the Cold War?
I think it showed people that nuclear weapons are no joke.
Speaking of nuclear weapons, I heard that Trevor knows a lot about them.
Indeed he does. Let's check in with Trevor in the field.
Today, I'm interviewing Dr. Preciado, who has dedicated her entire life to studying the arms race. In her research lab, talking about the arms race in the Cold War. Thank you for letting us interview you.
It's an honor to be interviewed by Channel 91. This was always my dream as a little girl, and if I do say so myself, I'd like to dedicate
Do you mind if we stay on topic?
Yeah, of course.
So, what can you tell me about the arms race?
I can tell you a lot about the arms race, actually. It's what I do for a living.
So, maybe let's start with what you do here.
Okay, well, at my lab, we study the arms race, or the tension of impending nuclear war. It is also a competition between nations for superiority concerning weapons. The most well-known arms race was the one between the US and the former Soviet Union during the Cold War.
And what can you tell us specifically about the arms race during the Cold War?
Well, it all started on August 29, 1949, when the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb. The United States was shocked because they had no idea the Soviet Union was this far in nuclear research. So in 1952, the United States detonated the first hydrogen bomb as retaliation. This was an even more powerful version of the nuclear bomb. Both sides spent billions and billions of dollars trying to build up their nuclear weapon supply. Spending all of this money was destroying their economies and eventually helped to bring an end to the Cold War. Both sides could attack at any second, and it wouldn't matter how successful the first strike was, the other side could still retaliate and destroy the country which first attacked. For this reason, neither side ever used nuclear weapons. The cost was way too high.
Wow, that sounds intense.
Yeah, it was. Now, if you don't mind, I have work to do.
Oh, okay then. Bah! Such a beautiful day. Nothing to be afraid of. Nothing could possibly go wrong. Oh my, danger!
Bert ducks and covers. He's smart, but he has a shell on his back. You need this. Just 4 payments of $19.99 a month.
Stalin was cancer running through Soviet Union for too long. Vote Nikita Khrushchev maybe, and yeah, he will not kill you. You must be 18 years older to vote, unless fake ID, then you're good. Ask your parents before going online, if not that good. Wait, do we have internet? What is internet? Paid for by World War II. So Mara, what have we learned today?
We've learned that the Cold War was super intense.
Yeah, like the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, well, signing off from Channel 91, I'm Mara.
And I'm Brett.
And I'm Trevor, the cameraman.
Bye!
See you next time.
Adios!
Well, it all started on August... Okay. Good morning and welcome back to the Channel 91 News.
I'm Mara.
Oh,
God!
the Berlin Wall.
No.
Oh my, danger!
Have you ever wanted to own a piece of history? Well, now you can with the piece of... God.
I'm interviewing...
Speaking of nuclear weapons, I heard that Trevor knows a lot about the development of them.
God!